Hi, welcome back. This week's essay is by Anant Argawal. He's a professor of electrical engineering and computer science at MIT. He also serves as the president of a program called edX, which is an online school where students can take free classes put on by some pretty famous universities around the country, like MIT and Harvard University. And I'll talk a little more about that in a minute. Argawal's essay is all about something called MOOCs. Now, this is an acronym for Massive Open Online Courses. Agarwal is very passionate about exploring new ways to teach, and as president of the edX project, he believes that in the very near future, some of the best opportunities for learning will take place online. And in many cases, it will be free. But to get a better idea of what's happening with MOOCs, let's take a quick look at the history of online learning, because it's certainly not a new concept. It really all started with the idea of individualized learning, meaning that a student can learn something without a teacher at the front of the class running the show. Of course, this usually included some type of machine. One of the first examples of this came around in 1928 when Sidney Pressey, who was an educational psychology professor at Ohio State University, invented the testing machine, which generated multiple choice questions that students would answer by pushing buttons. When they were finished, the machine would show them their total score. Another early example of individualized learning comes from B.F. Skinner, who was a very respected psychology professor at Harvard University back in the 1950s. He invented what was called the learning machine, which was kind of similar to the testing machine I just showed you, but Skinner's version was a little more sophisticated. Students would read questions that were printed on a roll of paper and then write their answers just below. When finished, they would then turn a large knob and move on to the next question. Now, B.F. Skinner is known more for his work in psychology than education. He was the guy who did a lot of experiments with behavioral modification, and he tried to prove that humans don't really have as much free will as we think. We're mostly acting on a subconscious level, choosing to do things according to how much pain or pleasure is associated with that activity. Which might explain why B.F. Skinner's other inventions, like the air crib, never really caught on. But back to the teaching machine, Skinner was definitely onto something. He was questioning whether it really makes sense to have a classroom where students all have to move through the material at the same time, the same place, and the same speed. A learning machine would allow students to learn at their own pace. I've included a link to a very interesting film from 1954 that has B.F. Skinner himself explaining his teaching machine. If you get a chance, you should check it out. It's only about 5 minutes, and I think you'll get a laugh out of watching this. Eventually, the concept of individualized learning turned into distance learning, which is still nothing new because even as early as 1950, Iowa State University was broadcasting TV courses that students could take instead of going to a classroom. You've probably heard of the University of Phoenix, which turned out to be one of the largest satellite schools we have in the country, and it's now one of the largest online schools in the world. They've been around since the 1970s. By the 1980s, some of the big names who were developing computers and computer software got very interested in this idea of individualized learning and started developing computer-based tutorials. Eventually, the concept of distance learning turned into online learning, which was made possible, of course, by using the internet and the web. As far back as 1997, the California Virtual University was making online classes available to students. They now have almost 20,000 courses and 1,300 different degree programs. The real spike in online learning happened between 2002 and 2008, where online enrollment increased by 187%. Of course, it wasn't long after that people started to question the quality of the education that students were getting from these online schools. Are students really learning anything, or are they just buying that piece of paper? It was a valid question to ask, and people are still asking that question today. Online schools have been kind of stigmatized, and so for a lot of people, just the words online course means cheap and inferior. But that's starting to change. As you'll find out in this week's essay, the typical fast and easy online school is changing, and what's coming into that space is some extremely high-quality educational programs conducted by some of the most respected colleges and universities in the world, places like Harvard, MIT, and Berkeley. Most of these are free, and those that aren't cost a very small fraction of what you would pay to attend those classes on campus. This movement has also spurred a lot of new online teaching websites that are devoted to providing really high-quality training and courses that employers are starting to take seriously when looking over the credentials of a job applicant. Sites like teamtreehouse.org, Courser.org, Thankful.com, Skillcrush.com. Now, it's hard to know whether these types of programs will ever replace conventional colleges entirely, but I have a hunch that being able to put some of these on your resume, in addition to your degree from Marshalltown Community College, might really give you an edge in the job market. I really think it would. Now, I've included another link to a short video that gives a nice overview of what MOOC is all about. You can find that link below on this page. For this week's chapter assignment, you'll be writing what's called an argument paragraph. Now, in its most simple definition, a written argument is an attempt to persuade a reader to think or act in a certain way. In an argument paragraph, you take a stand or make a claim about something. Then you support your stand with convincing details. Now, there's a certain science behind creating an effective argument. And this study of persuasive language started as far back as 340 BC with the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Aristotle made a pretty good living back in his day by helping lawyers present convincing arguments in a court of law. And what Aristotle discovered is that there are three primary things that must be part of an argument to effectively persuade people to see things your way: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos is all about credibility. Give your reader some reason to believe that you are qualified to talk about a particular subject. Pathos is all about emotions. Make your reader have an emotional response to your argument. Do some research and find out what might trigger an emotional response with those people. Logos is all about logic. Give your reader facts and figures that prove the validity of your argument. And as a bonus, this will also help strengthen the ethos in your argument because you're showing a reader that you're not just making this stuff up. Now, the best place to start is to choose a main point. Your main point will be the topic sentence of your paragraph, and it's the sentence that lets your readers know what you are arguing for. For example, a main point in an argument paragraph might sound like this: our school should donate books to local fundraisers. Or, our school cafeteria should provide better quality food. Or, students should earn credit for prep college courses. Or how about prep college courses should be free? The speed limit on Elm Street should be raised to 55 miles per hour. Or, the speed limit on Elm Street should be reduced to 25 miles per hour. These are all main points that could be good candidates for writing an argument paragraph. Now, in the second part of the worksheet, I want you to list as many details that you can think of about your argument, but arrange them in the three different categories we talked about: ethos, pathos, and logos. For example, under the category of ethos, with my main point about donating books to local fundraisers, I might come up with these details that add credibility to my argument. I have worked in our school library for the last 2 years. Or, I am in charge of recycling books that are removed from our catalog. Under the category of pathos, I might use the following sentences to get an emotional response from my readers. For example, imagine your child having to start school each morning without breakfast. Or, how well could you tolerate a hot summer day without air conditioning or a fan? Under the category of logos, I might use the following sentences to convince readers that my argument is logical and makes good sense. A 2013 study released by the No Kid Hungry campaign shows that breakfast helps students learn. Only half of the 21 million children eligible for free lunch are taking advantage of that federal program. Now, after you've listed a variety of different details, things that will help the ethos, the pathos, and the logos of your argument, it's time to put them all together in a complete paragraph. Be sure to include transition words throughout your paragraph to add emphasis to your argument. You can find out more about this technique in your textbook, and I've also provided a few suggestions on the worksheet itself. Now here's an example of how I might write an argument paragraph using the main point in my example. Our school should donate books to local fundraisers. Our school should donate books to local fundraisers. As a member of the community, we especially have a responsibility to help nonprofit organizations in our area provide services to residents in need. For example, No Kid Hungry will begin a fundraiser to start a new before-school breakfast program. A 2013 study released by the No Kid Hungry campaign showed 30% of the children in our neighborhoods start school each day without breakfast. Imagine your child having to start school each morning on an empty stomach. Working in our school library recycling program for the last 2 years, I've identified an opportunity to help the No Kid Hungry campaign. Of course, my entire paragraph would probably include another 6 to 10 sentences explaining in more detail how the school could actually do this, what it would cost, what the benefits would be, and why people should agree with me that it's an important project to take on. So for this week, the assignments are: 1. Read the essay by Anant Agarwal. 2. Watch the TED Talks video. 3. Write a response to the essay. 4. Read Chapter 13. And 5. Complete the argument paragraph exercise. If you have any questions, be sure to send me an email. And I will see you again next week. Thanks for watching.